Some years ago, my wife was caring for an elderly friend's mother during her final days. My wife has worked in care for many years, and as her friend's mother had advanced dementia, was entirely non-verbal and bedbound, the family needed some professional support to best help care for their mum. As such, it was arranged that my wife would stay at their mum's house from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon, as the family already took care of her around the clock during the week. Since the family has known me since childhood, they were more than happy for me to stay there over the weekend as well, and for our daughter, who had just turned 2 at the time, to be there with my wife, as she took care of their mum, who was bedbound in the lounge downstairs. I knew the house well from my childhood, as it was right across the road from my friend's parents' house. As a family, we had the second double room upstairs for my daughter and me, and my wife split the night between our upstairs room and a camp bed downstairs next to her patient for hourly checks, as she had alarms set throughout the night. My daughter would toddle around the house and ask questions about the lady my wife cared for, who my daughter ended up referring to as Nana. My daughter had explored the house thoroughly with my wife and me, but one day we went upstairs to go to our room and she wouldn't cross the landing. She outright refused and began to cry. I picked her up and asked her what was wrong, and she told me she was very scared. I asked her why, and she said she felt frightened and sad upstairs, so we went back down and she seemed happier. At bedtime, I got her to sleep downstairs and carried her up to bed once she was asleep. The following day, we went upstairs after breakfast to get her dressed, and she again wouldn't cross the landing. I asked her what was scaring her, and she pointed to the box room door. I asked her what she was pointing at, and she said, "The scary door." The door was exactly the same as all the other doors on the landing, dark brown, no detail other than the wood grain, and a right-angled brass handle. I told her that there was nothing scary about the door and opened it to show her inside. The room was a small room used for storing things the elderly lady hadn't used in years since she'd been bedbound: a chair, some board games, a couple of piles of her clothes, and a wooden rocking chair that used to be in the garden. I motioned for my daughter to join me in the room to show her that it wasn't scary, but she refused to enter and kept well back. I was beginning to wonder at this point, as she was always a very sunny, smiley little girl, so I asked her why she didn't like the door or the room. She said one word: died. I left the room, shut the door, and got her dressed. 2 weeks went by and she still wouldn't go near the door, but I either hurried her past while talking animatedly to her or carried her. Just to clarify, I wasn't scared myself, unnerved definitely, but my daughter clearly was, and as I didn't want her to be, we just tried our best to deal with those moments quickly. During one night, the elderly lady slipped away in her sleep with my wife and her daughter next to her holding her hand. We obviously didn't tell our daughter, as it would be a lot to process for a 2-year-old. I kept her upstairs, got her dressed and packed our day bag as usual, getting us ready to head downstairs and right out the front door so we didn't have to enter the lounge. As we got to the bottom of the stairs, the elderly lady's adult daughter walked into the hall and saw us. Immediately seeing my daughter, she lit up and said hello to her in her cheeriest voice, considering the circumstances. My daughter suddenly took her hand and said, "Nana is with the angels now." Her daughter just began crying and smiling quietly. We have no idea how she knew she'd passed. She passed maybe 3 hours earlier, and my daughter and I have maybe been awake half an hour. What's more, we're not a particularly religious family. My wife and I were both baptised, but we don't really attend church. The first time my daughter attended church was 8 months after this experience at a wedding, so we have no idea where she got the notion of angels from. That will honestly stay with me forever. The maddest thing is, when my daughter was born, she didn't cry. She was so calm. She also didn't cry on the ward afterwards with my wife, even though all the other babies were. One older nurse commented to my wife, "She's been here before that one." Maybe.
Before we move on to the next story, I'd like to ask you to support the channel by liking and subscribing. Your support is what gets us through long hours of research and editing. With that said, let's get to the next story. I'll start by saying I'm a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. If you ask me if I believe in ghosts, I'll say no, but I believe in the paranormal enough to not mess around with it. 3 years ago, I moved into my girlfriend's family home. Soon after, some pretty weird stuff started happening that I can't explain. One night, I was woken up by an extremely strong smell of vomit. It was strong enough to wake me. I thought maybe my girlfriend or I had thrown up in our sleep, but after checking the room, I found no evidence of the smell's source. Shortly after that came one of the biggest events. My girlfriend was feeling sick, so she slept in the spare bedroom, and I had our room to myself. I woke up to the sound of heavy breathing coming from our wardrobe and what looked like hands holding onto the open wardrobe door. It was dark. Maybe I was just seeing things, but the breathing was undeniable. Then, 3 loud bangs came from under the bed. It wasn't just pipes moving, it was the unmistakable sound of a deliberate noise. It would have been impossible for anyone in the house to make that sound. The living room was directly beneath our bedroom, and to even reach the ceiling, you'd need a ladder. Everyone else in the house was asleep. Nothing happened for a few months after that. Then, my girlfriend and her mother went on holiday for 2 weeks and left early one morning. I woke up to see them off and went back to bed. That's when I heard the heavy breathing from the wardrobe again. Except this time it was far, far louder. You couldn't not hear it. Freaked out, I got up and went to my games room, closed the door, and started playing my PlayStation. But I kept hearing a creaking noise. I assumed it was the wind, so I closed all the windows. But it continued. There was a wardrobe in that room, so I closed all the wardrobe doors, thinking it might be that. Still, the noise wouldn't stop. Then, I realized the source. It was the door handle. It was creaking as if someone was gently trying to turn it. I immediately threw the door open. Nobody was there. Yet the creaking continued. I tried to film the handle turning by itself, and it immediately stopped. These events freaked me out so much that I started keeping a crucifix next to the bed. Another time, I was in the house by myself, and out of nowhere, I heard what could only be described as loud whispers coming from the next room. It sounded like someone whispering very quickly, almost like chanting, but I couldn't make out the words. It lasted for a few seconds, then stopped. Again, I'm a skeptic, but I genuinely can't explain these events. I do believe it was some kind of malevolent entity that didn't like me, possibly empowered by the negative emotions from my girlfriend's parents' messy divorce, or maybe just reacting to my presence. I really got the feeling that whatever this thing was, it didn't like me in particular. I believe it was centered mainly in the walk-in closet of our bedroom, but weird things happened all around the house. We have since moved, and luckily, nothing like that has happened since. I haven't felt any bad presence either.